Today in Capechi's Corner, we're going to look at mean, median, mode, and range. We're also going to look at stem and leaf plot. Now, these are probably topics that you did in middle school, but the reason we're doing it in Algebra 1 again is that I teach in Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania students are required to pass an Algebra 1 Keystone test, where these topics are also tested. So in this lesson, we're going to do some review. Now, in order to find these values, we have to talk about what they mean. The first definition is mean, and that's when you find the average of something. The mean of test scores would be averaging them. When we're looking at median, that's when you're finding the middle value. So what you have to do is you have to place the values in numerical order and then figure out where the middle of those values appears. The vocabulary word mode means the value that occurs the most often. You can have no mode at all, or you could have more than one mode. And our final definition is range. This word means it's when we take the greatest value and we subtract the least value. That would be our range of the data. So let's practice some of these. We have 7 numbers that we're starting with, and we were asked to find the mean, median, mode, and range of these values. Now, the numbers are already written in order to make things a little easier for us and to save some time. If the data is given to you not in order, the first thing you need to do is to place these values in numerical order starting at the lowest value. In order to find the mean, remember that means the average. So I need to total all of these values up, and I get 602 divided by the number of scores there are, or the number of values that I have, and this is 7. So my mean here is 86. Now, when I'm looking at the median, remember that means the middle number. So because my numbers are already in order, there are 7 values. So if I take away 3 on the left, and 3 on the right, my middle value is going to be equal to 86. When you have an odd amount, it's going to be exactly the number in the middle. My mode is the number that appears most often. Now, in these 7 values, I don't have any number that is there more than once. So we say that there is no mode because there is not one that appears more often than the others. And my range, which tends to be the easiest one for students to quickly figure out, is just taking the highest value, which is 96, and subtracting my lowest value, which is 72, and that gives me 24. That's the range. Let's try another problem. So we have, again, a different set of numbers. They're already in numerical order, and this time we have 8 values. So again, when I find the mean, remember that means the average. So when I add all of those values together, I get 886, and I'm going to divide it by the number of values I have, which is 8, and that leaves me with 110.75. That's my mean. That's my average. When I'm looking at the median, remember that's my middle number. Now, the last problem we did had 7 values. It was an odd number, so there was a definite middle number. In this case, because I have 8, what I have to do is, again, let's say I take off 3 from the left and I go 3 from the right, and I'm left with my 2 values in the center. So what I have to do at this point is I have to take the average. So if I take 110 plus 112 divided by 2, that gives me 111, which is equal to the median. Now, in looking at the mode, again, that's the value that appears the most often. 90 appears there twice, so that is the mode. Again, I could have more than one mode. So if there was another number that was listed twice, I could have more than one mode. And again, my last piece there is my range. So I'm going to take 133, and I'll subtract 90. So my range is 43. Now we're going to look at stem and leaf plots. So a stem and leaf plot is a graphic display that arranges data by place value and shows the general shape of the data. So here we have a set of math test scores. So what happens is we have a stem, and that's really just the tens digits, or in this case we're going up to the hundreds digits. My leaf only ever has 1 digit. That's my ones digit. So by looking at this display, I can see kind of my general shape. I look like I have a lot of scores in the 80s, definitely a lot of scores in the 90s. And I can look at all the scores kind of all at once. It's a good visual. Now, one thing that's important when using a stem and leaf is you have to be given a key. So I know if I have 1 as my stem and 5 as my leaf, that equals 15. It doesn't equal 1.5 or anything like that, or 0.15. So we always have to make sure we're checking out that key before we get started. So as we look at our display of the information we have, for instance, this 6 and a 1 means someone scored a 61. If I have a 7 and a 2, that means someone had a 72. A 7 and a 3 means I had a 73. Now let's look at some of the questions. It says number 1 says, what is the best score? So I go to the bottom and I realize my highest score is 100, and it looks like 2 people have scored 100. Number 2 says, how many students have taken the test? So I would have to count all of my different values here, and if you count those up, it looks as if 30 students took the test. The last question here says, how many students scored a 90? Well, let's look at, here's my 9, and I have 1 here, and there's a second one. So it looks like 2 students scored a 90 on this particular math test. We have a few more questions dealing with this display. Number 4 says, what is the lowest score? So now I need to go up top. I have a 6 and a 1, so my lowest score is 61. And what is the range of the data? So my highest score was 100, and my lowest score was 61. So when I subtract them, the difference there is 39. That's the range of the data. Now let's look at some different types of questions involving things that we've talked about in this lesson so far. So this question says, LeBron averaged 24 points per game for the first 10 games of the season. How many points must he score in the next game to increase his average to 27 points per game? So remember, average is the mean. So let's go back. It says LeBron averaged 24 points per game for the first 10 games. So far he has scored 24 points. If he scored exactly that, that would be his average. So far he has 240 points that he has scored. Now he may not have done that exactly, but if that's the average, then that's kind of what we're talking about, 24 points each game. Now how many points must he score in the next game to increase his average to 27 points per game? So what would have to happen in the next game is if he had 27 points. Now if we add another game, remember now he's playing 11 games, that would mean he would need to score 297 points total to increase that average to 27. So that would mean I would take 297 minus 240. So if he was really looking to increase that average, he'd have to have a really good game, and he would have to score 57 points in that one game to increase his average. Our next question says, Jake's test scores are 87, 93, 88, 80, and 95. What must he score to have a median of 90? So if he were going to take another test and he wants his median to be 90, what would he have to do? Well, right now our median data is 88. I already put the scores in order to save us some time. If I want the median to be 90, that would mean it would be greater than 88, so it would be somewhere in there. So my score that I'm looking for has to be somewhere between 88 and 93. Now remember, if I have an even number of scores and I want the middle number, I have to have 88, and I need to add that missing score, which I'm going to make x, do a little bit of math. I would divide those numbers by 2 to get my average, and in this case, I'm looking for a median score of 90. So again, I take my score that I have that has to be part of the middle, my new score that I'm looking for, which is my unknown. Because I have an even number, I have to take those two middle numbers and divide it by 2, and again, my goal is to get a median of 90. So let's just do a little math. If I multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of that 2 as my denominator, this will simplify. I have 88 plus x is equal to 180. I subtract my 88 from either side, and x is equal to 92. So that would be my missing score that I would need in order to have a median of 90. Now, if I wanted to check that, I could say 88 plus 92 divided by 2 does equal 90, so I know I'm good to go. 92 is my missing score. Our last problem for today is looking at a stem and leaf plot, and we're talking about plant heights. Again, I need to look at my key first, and it's 2/6 equals 26 inches. So which of the following statements is not true is what my question's asking. So I need to look at each of these, A, B, C, and D, and decide which one is not true. Let's start with letter A. Most of the plants are less than 20 inches tall. So if I'm looking at my display, 20 is here, so anything below that is less than 20 inches tall, which is what A says. Most of the plants are less than 20 inches tall, and that is where most of my data is. So that's actually going to be a true statement. Letter B says the median plant height is 11 inches. Now remember, median means the middle value, so that's what I need to look for. They are in order, so I'm just going to kind of cross-run from the lowest values and some from the highest values until I get to the middle. So if I start with 1, 2, 3 from the lowest one, there's 3 from the highest one. I'll do 4 more from the lower ones, and again, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 from the higher ones, and so I'm left with 10. 10 is my median. Now, looking at letter B, it says the median plant height is 11, and I'm going to say that that is false. Now, it looks like B is my correct value because I was looking for a statement that's not true. However, in our Keystone testing, it's an untimed test, and we want to make sure that we don't get tripped up on something by accident. So we are going to take the time to check out letter C and D. So in looking at letter C, it says the range of the plant height is 35 inches. So I will take my highest value, which is 36, minus my lowest one, which is 31. So I do get 35, so that is a true statement. Letter D says the mode of the plant height is 11 inches. Well, I'm looking at this, and it does look like 11 definitely appears there twice, and nothing else appears twice. So my mode is, in fact, 11 inches, so that's true. So now, again, I go back to my question, says which of the following statements is not true, and that is letter B. The median plant height is 11 inches.